My 5-year-old son says my neighbor told him he has bunk beds and toys upstairs in case he ever wants to come over for a sleepover. What do I do? This is pretty simple. Just talk to him. Tell him that your son was over in his yard while he wasn't home and you want to make sure that it's not a problem. Take the opportunity to get to know him. Ask him if he's married, if he has kids. Be nice. Let him know that you're paying attention to him and, at the same time, feel him out. That's a great idea to initiate the conversation without being aggressive or burning bridges. Reminds me of an 11-year-old friend of one of my girls a while back. I have 3 girls who are all grown up and out of the coup now. But when they were younger 10, 5, 1, there was this little girl, 10yo, who always came over and seemed to want to stay over our home more and more, sometimes to the point where we had to ask her to go home due to dinner, homework or family time. She always asked if she could spend the night and such, and her insistence always seemed really odd to me, but I never followed up on my gut feelings or concern about her. Sometimes she did spend the night and everything seemed normal with her, but most of the time things were too hectic to allow it. Well, I drive by the girls' home one morning going to work and I see this huge collection of forensic car and vans outside the girls' home, as 2 or 3 guys with shovels dig holes all around the guy's yard. I quickly got out to ask what was going on, thinking someone was using drugs or even worse, maybe someone was killed. One of the neighbors pulled me aside and told me that according to the story relayed from mom and the little girl, dad was physically shaming her every day before school since she was 8 years old, and that he was burying all the condoms in the front and backyard, day after day. Mom worked an odd shift somewhere and wasn't home to send them off to school. I felt so bad knowing all those times she asked to stay at our place or we asked her to go home due to the time of night it was. So what's my point? Trust your gut and say something to someone who can investigate, do something about it. Bear in mind the guy might have just said stop by anytime or you're welcome here or something like that if your kid was just wandering around in his yard. He might have just said that to be nice and your kid tried to initially strike up a conversation with you two about what happened in his limited social life that day, and perhaps embellished the story a bit. As in, he knows you aren't supposed to invite yourself over, so he made up the bit about saying he could come over anytime to sleep over so you don't immediately say oh well you don't invite yourself over. That's rude. While unlikely, it is still a distinct possibility. I used to work with inner city kids in a tutoring program and I've heard all kinds of excuses to get out of work or to go hang out with someone from kids younger teens. The fact is, there are many possibilities, so just remain calm, watch your child, and confront this situation as soon as possible, and in person, before making judgments. After all, what if he were to say, wow, that guy let his kids roam around without supervision? He must be a horrible parent, so I'm going to call child services right now. That's something which is the same legitimacy of you calling the cops and reporting him with only the word of a young child on this guy. Just talk to him and use your parental instincts first, then go from there. Just emo. I still vividly recall the time in which I was the kid in the same scenario. I was sent outdoors to play in the backyard a lot, and my neighbor was always saying hi to me. One day in first grade, I came home from school, it was across the street, to find no one at home. I sat on the front porch for a while feeling sorry for myself, when the neighbor invited me into his place to wait. He didn't do anything sinister or weird, just let me watch TV and have some juice or something. But oh man, was my mom livid when she found me there. I suppose she was already frazzled knowing her daughter was locked out of the house and alone. But she laid into this guy in front of me and I can't forget it. I felt he had saved me, and here the person I trusted most in the world was telling him off for it. I was very confused by the whole event. I know it is better to be safe than sorry when it comes to your family, but do keep in mind how your child will feel about this interaction. Try to trust your son and keep him from any negativity about the neighbor until you are sure he is a bad guy. He may just be a lonely, socially awkward guy that finds kids easier to talk to, and he may end up being the best babysitter you ever lived next door to. Not that the guy wanted to set himself up for that, but the best idea would have been to wait outside with you until your mom came home. It's the taking you back to his house thing that puts the whole situation into question. Although I feel bad for the guy just trying to do a good deed. Ask your son if the neighbor mentioned having kids of his own. He may be separated, gets his kids over to stay once in a while or whatever. I'm not in any way defending his actions thus far, but it would be interesting to know. Good idea. I never see any kids in or around his house though. Look him up in the diddler database. If you get a hit, then have a talk with the cops and the post commander. If you don't get a hit, have a serious talk with your son about not going into that house and avoiding this neighbor. Also, make your neighbor aware that what he did was inappropriate and that you will be watching him like a hawk. Do not take your neighbor's word for it. If he's shady, he is going to lie. If he's a stand-up guy, he'll understand why you're there. Trust your son and treat him as if he is telling the truth in this. If for nothing else but that you'll want him to know he can come to you in the future about anything, and you'll listen and take him seriously. I tried this but I don't know his last name. Is the dude mentally retarded? I have a 22-year-old cousin that is mentally retarded and basically is at the same level as a 10-year-old. He doesn't fit in with the teen to adult crowd, but is wonderful with kids. Unfortunately, he doesn't look like a 10-year-old, so parents are creeped out when he tries to play with kids. He's not a skeezy perv, but I can see how people would assume so. He just wants to play and make friends. Definitely talk to the neighbor. Maybe he is a part-time dad and has the kid only sometimes. I hope so. Talk to the neighbor. Get his side. If he denies, just say kids will be kids, and then make sure none of your kids are ever unsupervised around him, just in case. If he admits it, just tell him you're uncomfortable with the idea, and you'd prefer he doesn't do it again. If the kid's story isn't totally accurate and the guy is reasonable, he will absolutely understand when the OP sets boundaries. If the guy really is a scumbag, hopefully knowing that the OP is watching will deter him. People seem to be overreacting. I have toys and such at my house because of my cousin's nieces' nephews that come over. And well, I'm sure that bunk beds thing did not come out as he may have intended. Bunk beds are cool, the doctor. It may have been plausible the neighbor was just trying to friendly with the kid and socialize with him. What kid doesn't like bunk beds? Anyways, just have a nice talk with your neighbor. Don't go in aggressively with the whole stranger danger BS. I remember when I was a kid, I would go play at my neighbors' houses all the time. Doesn't mean that they were pedos or anything. They could just be normal people who adore kids. Seriously, I know there's that diddler scare thing going around, but a vast majority of people do not want to fondle your son's tittlebits or whatever you guys think is going to happen. Someone are just nice and awkward around kids and don't know how to act around them but still want to be friends with them. TLDR. Could just be an awkwardly nice guy who adores children and does not know how to interact with them. So anyways, I sat my son down and asked him if he went into the neighbor's house. He said no. I then asked him what his living room looked like. He said that his living room was cleaner than ours and that he had kids' movies. Oh kids. Go to the neighbor's house with your son. You have your own blanket and pillow and tell him we're here for the sleepover and wear your service cap. Didn't your kid just sneak into your neighbor's house? It would make sense of him lying about that. He might have seen things like toys and kids movies over there, because a lot of guys in their 20s actually have those things. Of course you should check this with your neighbor. I would tell your son what I told mine when they were small. They were not to go anywhere without the permission of the adult in charge. I would quiz them on who was in charge, from time to time, and correct any misunderstandings. In our house the rule would be that you do not go to a neighbor's house, even just to hang out in the front yard, without the permission of the adult in charge. I also educated them about behaviors. Kids have a hard time differentiating between strangers and friends, and trying to have them make judgments about people based on their impressions is really chancy. I told my kids that if someone needed help finding a puppy, what are the chances they would ask a kid, rather than another adult? Why would a rational adult do that? They wouldn't, and my kids got that. So helping people find puppies, nope, nor kittens. I also told them that if they declined candy from anyone other than family members, I would give them twice the candy they declined. They had people try to give them candy occasionally, and they always declined. They got some really nice trips to Powell's sweet shop out of it. We also talked about who safe people are to approach if they get lost, and we did actually lose one son when he was 7. He did the best thing possible, went to the local small drugstore, right across the street and asked the person behind the counter to call me. He refused the help of a well-meaning person who did not fit the safe person template in favor of asking someone in a uniform, druggist's lab coat. I got the information from Gavin de Becker in his book Protecting the Gift, which I recommend both you and your wife read. He makes really rational suggestions for keeping your children safe in a way that they can understand. Also told them that if they declined candy from anyone other than family members, I would give them twice the candy they declined. If I was your child, I would have made up so many strangers that I had declined candy from. Before you ruin anyone's life by calling the cops, confront the guy. I really want to, but he hasn't been home in the past few days, and I really do not want to ruin anyone's life. 1. It could be just an innocent thing. The vast majority of people are actually not out to molest your kids. But 2. Check the diddler's database anyway. 3. Get to know said neighbor. Maybe he's a dad himself and just wants to be friendly. 4. Otherwise, tell the guy to back off but be polite about it. Also, you could be right and your son could be lying. 5-year-olds do have wild fancies sometimes. Better to be safe than sorry though. Young kids can be tricky. When I was younger I had a situation while babysitting 2 young girls. The youngest one, I think 4 or so at the time, told her parents that earlier that night I touched her no place. Her parents, who have known me for quite a while, kept a level-headed about this before doing something prematurely like calling the cops and ruining my life. First they asked the youngest one exactly what happened, asking her for the details of how the situation unfolded, waited a while, like who did, and then asked her again to see if the story matched up. Well, the story she told was very general and didn't have a whole lot of details in it. This gave the parents a red flag that she might have been making some or all of it up. Overly detailed stories and overly general stories are a good indicator that a lie is being told. Then they asked the older sister, who was around 6, if I was alone with the little one for any extended amount of time. Well, unfortunately for me I was, as the oldest one decided to go to bed early because she wasn't feeling well. They then asked the older daughter if I had ever touched her or done anything inappropriate with her. I'd babysat them plenty of time before and she told them I had never done anything like that. She told her mom, only big girls do that with boys. This threw up another red flag and the parents grilled her to find out where she heard that. They found out she had watched a rated R movie the previous day without the parents knowing. While watching it she saw enough foreplay, enough of an adult scene to get a general idea of it's a big girl thing. Well, she told the younger one about how it's funny if boys touch the no place and that's what big girls do. So in order to be a big girl, the young one told her parents I touched her no place. Thank God they kept a level head about them and worked through the situation before calling the cops. Even if the cops figured out the kid was lying, my reputation could have been seriously fricked. That was also the last time I ever babysat. But point I'm making is that sometimes little kids 1. Hear things wrong. 2. Remember things differently than how they happened. 3. Make crap up because they are young and they don't understand the impact it can have. Trust your gut, but be smart about it at the same time. Don't pressure the kid to give up information. He will eventually give you answer he thinks you are trying to get out of him. But I would likely call the police and report what you know, and they can check it out. Dude isn't screwed unless he actually does have bunk beds, toys, etc. with no reasonable explanation. Even if he does, there's no crime in owning kids' toys and bunk beds. It's creepy as frick, but it's not illegal. How come your creeped out wife isn't sure she saw your kid going out of the neighbor's house? If something was really odd, I think she'd spot it right away and be sure of what she saw. Also, maybe it's just your kid's way of telling you he wants more movies and to host sleepovers. You could also just tell the story to your neighbor once you catch him and proceed according to his reactions. I do sympathize for your situation. One thing struck me though, you were inside with the 3-year-old and the 8-month-old. Did your 5-year-old sneak out and you didn't notice? Way too young to be out alone. I appreciate it's hard when you have little ones to care for, but really you do have to have eyes in the back of your head. Certainly, notwithstanding what you decide to do about the neighbor, you need to be ultra vigilant in keeping an eye on all the children all the time. No instances of 5-year-olds wandering out of the house alone for 10 minutes or however long are really acceptable. Not just because of creepy neighbor, but because of things like busy roads, garden ponds etc etc. Maybe the neighbor is divorced with a kid and has children's stuff in his house because he gets to see his kid every other week. Possibly he explained to your son they could have a sleepover one weekend when his kid is over at the house and your kid misunderstood and took it as what he told you. Just providing an alternative theory on how this could be a misunderstanding. So anyways, I sat my son down and asked him if he went into the neighbor's house. He said no. I then asked him what his living room looked like. He said that his living room was cleaner than ours and that he had kids' movies. I asked him what his upstairs looked like and he said that he hadn't been inside his house but that his neighbor told him that he had bunk beds and kids' toys for sleepovers. Nope, wasn't there. Yep, I was there. Oh wait, no I wasn't. In your front yard, place the kid under a large cardboard box that is being held up by a stick. Tie a rope to the stick. Grab the other end of the rope and go hide in the bushes. If the neighbor gets too close, pull rope and you have caught a diddler. If not, you spent the day playing fort. I was inside with our 3-year-old and 8 so I wasn't watching. Huh, you are tossing accusations around, but you aren't responsible enough to keep tabs on your 5-year-old child. Dude, get a lock for that freaking door, and don't let your kids outside alone until they are old enough to take care of themselves. Yeah, my 5-year-old was never outside unless I was as well to keep an eye on him. That is just not an age where they should be left unsupervised. I've recently been through something similar to this. Just be warned, the Child Protection Center is not always your friend. If you tell any public official, there will be an investigation and both parties will be questioned. If they feel you neglected to protect your child, that is, not watching them, you will at best be placed on a child maltreatment list. At worst you could be accused of child neglect yourself. The child protection system is seriously fricked up. My wife told a doctor about a possible issue and we all got investigated because of it, even though it was clear early on nothing had happened. I am a 40-year-old recent divorcee trying to start over in a new neighborhood. I just moved in a little while ago, and I think my neighbors are out to get me. Yesterday, my neighbor knocked angrily on my door and yelled in my face that I am never to talk to his children again. I've never talked to his children in my life. What do? I think these people are trying to ruin my life. I came to this neighborhood to start over, and this lunatics are trying to make me out to be a pedophile. Cross-check his name on your state's diddler website. I would be checking as many states as I can for him. Not to upset you or anything, but you asked leading questions. Little kids, especially those under 7, love to give answers to questions, even if they don't actually know it. There's been a number of psychological studies done where children have given answers to questions they don't actually know the answer to, describing something they've never seen, an event that never happened, or talking about a person they've never met. And they're not vague memories, they are quite vivid and imaginative. While I will say you should probably keep an eye on the situation and urge your child to not interact with the neighbor when you or your wife are not around, I don't think you should jump to the conclusion that your neighbor is ready to touch your child inappropriately. Staying observant at this point in time is probably your best course of action. Man, frick everything about people thinking people are creepy for trying to be nice. I had a 60-year-old neighbor that was fricking fun as heck to be around when I was like 4-5 years old. I would go over to their house alone and they would feed me pie and let me play with their toys, and after that I would go home. End of story. I have fond memories of the couple. Sometimes people just want to be nice, you fricking be. I think it's probably just a misunderstanding. I mean, come on, kids misunderstand things all the time. This is probably just a classical misunderstanding. Think about it, how many people really actually want to frick 5-year-old boys? It happens, but I think we have a distorted perception of the risk because of the media's disproportional coverage of kiddie debauchery. Get a jump on things and physically shame your neighbor. Dress up in adult diapers, then go over there for a sleepover. If you aren't physically shamed, then it's probably safe for your child. Better be safe than sorry in this instance, I think. Keep a special watch on your neighbor in case he exhibits more suspicious behavior. Explain to your child that you don't want you to spend time with the neighbor unless you or your wife is there. And never, ever invite him to babysit. Yeah, I think I am going to sit him down and tell him this. He is a smart kid. My 2.5-year-old is honestly the greatest child I've ever met in my life, but she has the tendency to make up wild and detailed stories that are clearly not true, going into the level of detail that you describe your son doing. Kids have extremely vivid imaginations. That said, I think you should pursue this as far as you possibly can. Good luck with everything, mate. Call Dexter. Tell him to do it. Bunk beds are freaking awesome. And toys frick yeah. The line for torches and pitchforks forms to the left. Keep it orderly, people. There is plenty of time to get all lynch mobby later. He has kids movies, toys and bunk beds. Since you don't know the guy, maybe start by asking, so, have any kids? Plenty of single dads out there with limited visitation. Maybe he is an uncle, or has a friend who is frequently out of town, like someone who is in, oh, I don't know, the military, for example. But, as you pointed out, you know nothing about neighbor, and this could all be explained. If you knew him, maybe he's got a 6-year-old and lives divorced, and suggested sleepovers with 6-year-old, but that part was missed in translation by 5-year-old. I don't know, I'm just saying your biggest danger is in not knowing. Also ask any 5-year-old to repeat verbatim any conversation, and proof it for accuracy. I also wouldn't doubt the cops would lay into you for having let the 5-year-old out of your sight, even if, insert list of excuses. You should craft traps in order to determine his orientation. First, obtain 2 large boxes, 2 wooden poles and 2 lengths of rope. Prop up the boxes and tie the rope to the poles. Underneath one box place a X-rated magazine, perhaps something involving Asians or big boobs. Under the other, a bottle of lube and a small shop front dummy wearing children's clothing. Await your neighbor's return, and depending on the result, either call the police or invite him round for a beer to apologize, celebrate. Wait a minute here. Before you sully someone's reputation, try talking to the neighbor. Ask him directly if what he said is true and get a feel for his body language. If his body language indicates that what your little boy said is true, make it clear that if the neighbor tries it again, you'll be phoning the police. I'm not really good at reading body language, to be honest, but I do want to talk to him and ask him if he told my kid some of this stuff. Do not let your son outside unattended again, no matter how many kids you have to watch. He is even more vulnerable if someone thinks he isn't supervised sufficiently. I am a longtime mom. When I was in middle school and pet sitting for the neighbors, the husband told me that I should definitely have a bunch of my friends over for sleepovers and feel free to sleep in their bed and use their bathroom. Emphasis on using the bathroom to shower and feel comfortable in their house. My parents were pretty uncomfortable with the whole thing and went over with me the next time I fed the dogs. They didn't see any cameras or anything, but I don't think they were being overly careful. You can protect your kid, keep a better eye on him, and not let him be around this dude without hurting the neighbor's life or reputation based on potential creepiness. Unless it gets creepier, then take action. Awkward situation. I'd probably question him and let him know that your son told you that he had invited him over for a sleepover. Then, depending on my gut, if the guy is mildly retarded, I'd give him the benefit of the doubt. I'd explain to him that if he likes his ability to walk, he'd better not approach my son again. Personally, I'd go over there and not leave till he answers and make sure he understands my freaking son isn't to enter his house unless his parents are with him. That's just flat out freaking creepy. I work in this field. I thought I should respond. Inform the cops. Maybe nothing will come of it, but if he is in their system for related reasons, it will pop up. They might not even talk to him if he does not pop up in their system. But if he has done things like this before, the cops will pursue it. This one is better not to mess with. I talk to cops and child protective services all the time. Let them decide if it is important or not. They deal with this stuff all the time. I'd say your best bet is to take it up your chain of command. You're in base housing, and you have a right to feel safe. Talk to your supervisor and tell him you're really uncomfortable with the whole situation and that you're going to ask the shirt about it. Get in touch with your shirt and explain all about what has happened. Be extremely clear with your shirt that your kid is saying nothing happened and you have no reason to believe that the guy is a diddler, but that you're still very uncomfortable with what happened and how he isn't getting back to you. Ask if they can contact the security force's shirt. Since he's living on base, it's a good bet that he isn't a registered diddler, but the SecFo shirt will know what your options are. It won't ruin his life or his career to have SecFo come sweep his house for any identifying paraphernalia. I cannot stress this enough. There will not be any repercussions to him if he is innocent and you approach this properly. Go to your shirt and have them get the SecFo shirt and look at it that way. Explain that he hasn't done anything illegal, but that you wanted to see what your options were because an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure and all that crap. Your shirt is your greatest resource for things like this. I'd say be covered. Grab a 6-pack, head over and be like, hey, nice place. Ever meet any of my kids? Love them to death. I'd hunt down a perp and feast on his entrails if I even thought someone looked at my kids wrong. But then I am just a USA soldier who has been given the tools to kill and the training to not let it affect him. This cause is super cold. You have been visited by the wisdom pupper type. Study well, pupper, or you will fail your next text at school. Like and subscribe, you magnificent person.